We are starting lesson 3, developing complex cultures. In your Google Classroom, you will find your digital notebook. Please open it. The video will be in that same posting in your Google Classroom. It will be right next to your digital notebook.
Lesson 3. Developing Complex Cultures. Over millions of years, many groups of early humans appeared and then died out. Homo sapiens, or modern humans, were the last of these groups to appear. As you will read, scientists still have much to learn about the development of the first modern humans. But one fact is clear. These large-brained, wise people were often on the move. Over many thousands of years, they spread out to populate, or become inhabitants of, almost every land area of the world.
All right, let's watch this video.
Imagine that you have always lived in a cold, snowy climate. This has been true for as long as anyone can remember. Then, gradually, the climate starts to get warmer. Glaciers shrink and melt. Ocean levels rise. Many plants and animals can adapt quickly, but others cannot and gradually die out. This is no longer the land your people have always known. That is what humans faced as the last ice age ended about 10,000 years ago. Plants flourished. Some trees now grew farther north to areas that had once been covered with ice and snow. But many species of large animals, like the mammoth and ground sloth, died out as the ice age ended. Now humans needed to find something else to hunt and eat. But how? Remember, most people were still hunter-gatherers. Now some turned to fishing or found smaller animals to hunt. But others looked for new ideas and new ways to live in this new and different environment. The changes they made were so great that this period is called an agricultural revolution. How might this revolution have gotten started? Among hunter-gatherers, women had always collected fruits, seeds, and other food from plants. When they returned to the same place the next year, they noticed that where they had scattered seeds, new plants had grown. So they began to deliberately plant those seeds and cultivate the young plants. People also found other ways to change their surroundings so they would provide more food. Sometimes people set fires to clear land for homes and farmland. When grasses grew back on the burnt land, animals like deer often came to graze. Also, sometimes edible grasses and grains sprang up there. Some of those early changes were just lucky accidents. But then people began to deliberately change plants and even animals to make them more useful and easier to depend on. They picked the grains and grasses that grew best, like wheat or rice or maize, and carefully tended them so they would give better harvests. They picked the plants that gave the biggest yields or the sweetest fruit, and carefully tended them. They dug canals to bring water to the fields or control floods. They even flooded entire fields for water-loving plants like rice. Over time, they made new tools like sickles to cut grain or special stones to grind it into flour. Some early farmers tamed or domesticated animals that had once roamed wild. Some domesticated animals, like oxen and horses and cows, lived and worked on farms. Animals pulled loads or carried people on their backs. Others provided meat and milk and hides for the family. Some, like sheep, goats, and llamas, also provided wool for clothing. And at some point in human history, a few kinds of wild wolves developed into dogs, which gradually became companions to early humans. Many places, though, were too dry or too rocky to make good farmland. Many people there didn't settle down to grow crops, but still lived as herders. These families traveled with the seasons and the times when the rains came. They moved with their flocks of goats or sheep to where the grasslands were richer or the water supply was better. This way of life would go on for thousands of years, well into modern times. Would you have chosen to be a farmer or a herder? Why?
All right, so let's look at these guiding questions. What evidence reveals how human societies became more complex? How did humans learn to modify their environment? Why did some people develop agriculture while others lived as herders? So, in your guided notes, let's look at this. On your first page, you will find those same 3 questions. So, go ahead, pause my video, answer these questions, and if you are in class, we will have a discussion. On page 2 of your your digital notebook, you have your 5 vocab words. The same vocab words are here that you've already defined in your Frayer, but here they are again. Please take a few minutes now and put the definition on your page 2 of your digital notebook. Moving on to page 3 of your digital notebook, we will go and start with, when did people start to create art?
When did people start to create art? Over the course of the Ice Age, the culture of Paleolithic communities became more and more complex. One of the most important signs of a complex culture is the existence of artwork such as paintings and statues. What can we learn from ancient cave paintings? In 1940, 4 French teenagers and their dog made a remarkable discovery. The boys were exploring a cave near Lascaux in southern France. By the dim light of their lamps, they were amazed to see that the walls were covered with paintings of horses, bison, bulls, and other prehistoric animals. Other paintings in the cave showed human figures or abstract designs. Scientists later determined that the Lascaux cave paintings dated back about 16,000 years, to the time of the last ice age. Some images were carved into the stone, but most were painted. The artists made pigments by grinding up minerals of various colors. Even older cave paintings have been found elsewhere in France, as well as in Spain. Examples of cave and rock art have also been discovered in many other parts of the world where early people lived. For example, the rock paintings shown at the beginning of this chapter are from the Sahara, a vast desert in North Africa. Stone Age artists also carved small statues. Like the cave paintings, many of these carvings represent animals. Others depict pregnant women.
All right, what did French teenagers discover in a cave near Lascaux? Go ahead and in this very first paragraph, I'm going to highlight it for you. You will find your answer. So pause my video and find that answer now.
What does Stone Age art tell us? Early works of art such as these show that Stone Age people were capable of complex thoughts and actions. After visiting one French cave, an archaeologist commented, "The mark of human genius is here, full-blown, with its immerse in eternal mystery, and with all its potential for hope in the success of the adventure of modern man. We become modest in these surroundings. A great feeling of timelessness comes from them. When we return to the surface, we can't help but question the motivations that lie behind the creation of all those frescoes. To imagine the unimaginable, in any case, in contemplating them we feel the presence of an intense, enormous will to create." Robert Beguin, The Cave of Chauvet-Pont d'Arc. We do not know the exact reasons Stone Age people created these works of art. Perhaps hunter-gatherers believed that creating an image of an animal would give them power over that animal during the hunt. Statues of pregnant women may have been intended to bring good luck to women about to give birth.
All right, question number 2. What do cave and rock paintings tell us about life in the Ice Age? So in this paragraph right here, you will find your answer. Moving on to page 4 in your digital notebook. What do we know about Stone Age religion? Before we move into that, let's look at this cave art. So the Paleolithic cave art found in Lascaux, France, depicts many species of animals as well as a human form rarely seen in earlier art. Many of the cave chambers are found deep within the rocks. Scientists believe these were used for religious ceremonies. The location suggests that humans created torches to provide light. Ladders or scaffolds were needed to create the art on the cave's massive walls and ceilings. Rocks and bones were used for engraving. Scholars have observed that symbols in the art, like series of dots and serpentine lines, reveal the work of a more sophisticated human mind. So if we look at this, you can look at this as well on your computer. Open Savaz if you don't already have it open to lesson 3E text. The symbols of the bird on a stake and the colon dots demonstrate a new level of sophistication in the Paleolithic era. So here's your bird, here's your dots. They're saying this is more sophisticated than any cave painting they've seen to date. A mother figure was carved in limestone at what might have been a ceremonial site. In the passageway to one of the Paleolithic age tombs, limestone carvings consist of intricate lines in a snake-like pattern. The Hall of Bulls is a magnificent expanse filled with paintings of bulls, many of which are marked with the symbolic 4 dots. One can see symbolic lines or characters behind the bull. He wears black spots on a light background for added embellishment. If you look, you can see it closer up. Now moving on to what do we know about Stone Age religion?
What do we know about Stone Age religion? Cave paintings and other art provide strong evidence that the cultures of Stone Age people became more complex over time. Another sign of a more complex culture is the development of religious beliefs and practices. Many of these practices involve death and burial. How did early people bury their dead? Scientists have found much evidence to show that Ice Age people buried their dead. One grave found in present-day Russia contained the bodies of 2 children, a boy about 13 years old and a girl about 8 years old. Both children were covered with thousands of ivory beads. On his chest, the boy wore an ivory pendant carved in the shape of an animal. The girl wore a bead cap and an ivory pin at her throat.
All right, so go ahead and answer number 1 on page 4 of your digital notebook. In this paragraph, you will find the answer to number 1.
What were some early religious practices? Discoveries such as cave paintings, statues, and burial sites may suggest how early humans reacted to what they thought were mysterious and powerful forces. These rituals and symbols were an important part of early culture. They go beyond survival and express deeper meanings of the natural and social world. The evidence suggests that these early people believed that the natural world was filled with spirits, a belief known as animism. To early humans, there were spirits in the animals they hunted. There were also spirits in the trees, rocks, water, and weather around them. Prehistoric people may have painted pictures of animals such as bison or deer to honor the spirits of those animals and to ask forgiveness for having to kill them.
All right, number 2. What is the term for the belief that spirits fill the natural world? You will find that answer in this paragraph. Pause my video and get that now. I wanted to let you know that number 2 on page 4 is on your quiz. So please be aware that number 2, the one you just answered, is on the end of the lesson quiz.
Reading check. Identify implied main ideas. What did the development of religious practices suggest about the relationship early humans had with the natural and social world?
All right, I want to look at this picture. So analyze this image. This child was carefully buried with jewelry made of bones and precious stones. So we're inferring, and we're not writing this anywhere, but What does this burial suggest about the culture of the people who buried him? So I'm going to add a number 3 to page 4, and you can answer this question so that you don't have to use the notebook tool. I have added a number 3 now. So again, what does this burial tell us about these people and the culture? So why would they have put these intricate bones, the jewelry, the precious stones? Why would they have put these things with this child when they buried him? Pause my video and answer number 3, please. Let's move on to page 5. When did people start to farm?
When did people start to farm? By the end of the Paleolithic era, human beings occupied many regions of the world. They had developed complex spoken language, learned to make a variety of tools and weapons, and adapted to different environments. Yet in many important ways, their lives had not changed. They still lived in relatively small groups as hunter-gatherers, following the herds of animals that they depended on for survival. Then, beginning as much as 18,000 years ago, humans gradually began to learn a new skill that over time changed how they would live. By around 10,000 to 9,000 years ago, some communities were relying on farming for food. This development marked the end of the Paleolithic era and the beginning of what we call the Neolithic era, or New Stone Age. The prefix neo means new. Around this time, temperatures increased and rainfall patterns changed. Glaciers that had covered so much of Earth began to shrink. As the ice from the glaciers melted, ocean levels rose. Most plants and animals adapted to these changes. Fir trees, which could survive cold weather, spread north into once icy regions. Some large Ice Age animals, however, did not adapt to a warmer world, and many species died out. People who had hunted some of these animals for food had to find something else to eat. Some people adapted to these changes by searching for new sources of food. They found smaller animals to hunt. People living near rivers or lakes began to depend more on fishing. How did people...
Oops. Okay. So number 1, what was the biggest change of the Neolithic era? So you will find that answer in this paragraph. Pause my video and find it now. Number 2, how did Earth's climate, land, and water change at the end of the last ice age? For that answer, you're going to want to look in this area, and I'm going to mark it in a different color. So in the pink highlighted is where you will find the answer for number 2.
How did people first modify the environment? Others learned to modify or change their environment so that it would provide more food. For example, people cleared trees and bushes by setting them on fire. The grasses that grew back attracted grazing animals such as deer. People may also have noticed that if seeds were scattered on the ground, new plants grew there the next year. This discovery led them to find ways to encourage the growth of wild food plants.
Number 4, what can you do with domesticated animals? Oops, I'm sorry. Number 3 on page 5. What are 2 things that early people did to modify their environment? Sorry about that. I skipped one almost. In this green highlight, you will find the answer to number 3. Go ahead and get that now.
How did domesticated plants and animals change people's lives? Over time, people learned to domesticate plants and animals, especially those that they used for food. To domesticate means to change the growth of plants or behavior of animals in ways that are useful for humans. Widespread domestication marked the birth of farming. The shift from hunting to farming was so important that historians call it the Neolithic Agricultural Revolution. A revolution is a complete change in ways of thinking, working, or living.
We have number 4. What can you do with domesticated animals? So you have in this section, you will find the answer to number 4. And then what happens during a revolution? You can find that answer in the green. Actually, let's make it blue. So number 4 is going to be in pink. Number 5 answer is in blue. And hint, 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 number 4 and number 5 are both on the quiz. Number 4 and 5 are both on the quiz. Find the answer for 4 in pink and for number 5 in blue.
Even before the agricultural revolution, wild wolves developed into dogs, which humans then domesticated. Dogs provided help in the hunt, as well as companionship and protection. Domesticated plants, or crops, became a reliable source of food. Grains such as wheat, rice, or maize became chief food sources for entire societies. Many animals also provided food, not only meat, but eggs, milk, and even honey. Horses and oxen became work animals. Sheep and llamas had coats of hair that were used to make clothing. Domesticated animals such as horses, sheep, and cattle were easier to control. People who lived in places where growing food was difficult traveled to different places with their animals. By moving to new areas, the animals would find new grasslands to eat from. The people herding or guiding the animals would use them for food and clothing. This way of life was called pastoral nomadism. Nomads are people who move from place to place with their herds. At first, there was little difference between wild and domesticated breeds. But over time, people selected the seeds of the plants that produced the best crops to sow again. As a result, domesticated plants began to produce more abundant food that tasted better, were larger, and easier to cook. A wild tomato, for example, is the size of a cherry, but a domesticated tomato is the size of an orange. By contrast, some breeds of domesticated goats, pigs, and cattle are smaller than their wild ancestors. Smaller animals may have been easier to manage.
All right, number 6. Why did people domesticate plants? You will find that answer right. Actually, nope, that answer is going to be up here. I was on the wrong paragraph. So you'll find that answer in yellow. Why did people domesticate plants? Not only that, but that is also one of your quiz questions. On page 7, what were some differences between wild and domesticated plants? So there's a typo. Let me fix it. So what were some differences between wild and domesticated plants? You will find that, let's see, it talks about down here. It talks about sizes. So let's just say in that, so in pink, you will find the answer to number 7 on page 7.
What new tools did people make? Farmers invented new tools. They used axes to cut down trees for farmland and sickles to harvest grain. The grain was then ground into flour with grinding stones or hand mills. All of these tools were at first made out of stone. Later, people mined for bronze and iron and learned how to smelt or use heat to remove metals from a material. They used these metals to create more efficient tools. That is why historians refer to different stages of early history as the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age.
Number 8. What new tools helped farmers to clear their land and harvest grain? So we have right here, and we'll say that whole paragraph. So in green, you will find your answer for number 8. And number 9, why do you think people created new tools? Now, that is an opinion question, but let's just say It might have something to do with what's highlighted in pink. And let's think about if they have better tools, it'll make life a little easier. So go ahead and pause my video and answer number 8 and 9 from the highlighted green for number 8 and the highlighted pink for number 9.